There is no housing bubble? What are you talking about? Stay tuned to find out exactly what I mean. Promise you, it'll be worth it. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to Real Estate Reaction. So I got a good one for you today, right? So right off the bat, Bank of Canada isn't worried about a housing bubble. This is absolutely bonkers, right? So the quote I'm going to lead you to right now is Tiff Macklem, the head of Bank of Canada, is saying that so far, and this is quote for quote, so far we are not seeing the kind of excessiveness in the housing market that would get us worried. This doesn't look like 2017. Dude, come on, man. Like my friends at university say, what the heck, bro? Like, I don't understand why he's saying this, because everybody is calling for him to increase the interest rate tomorrow, and I'll talk about this a little bit more on this video. But the whole idea here is if he's not going to increase the interest rate, there's going to be more exuberance in the market. Now, even though he doesn't think that there's a bubble, the fact that prices are escalating at such rapid rates is a terrible idea. He should at the very least have some kind of forward guidance or talk about the fact that, hey, look, prices are a little bit excessive, right? To kind of at least taper off a little bit of the exuberance. But the fact that he says he doesn't see the kind of excessiveness in 2017, I don't know what market he's looking at. Because even when I look at some of the stuff that's selling recently, I'm like, holy cow, this really reminds me of 2017. Like, the only difference is that people, like, a lot of Chinese buyers in 2017 just throwing money blindly without looking at properties that offers selling on day one. I'm not quite seeing people put offers in without looking at the property. Granted, I did see one last week, but it's not quite like 2017, but the price ramp up is quite like 2017. So it's crazy. Now, his whole belief is that we start to get worried and people buy houses for the sole reason that prices will go up. And he's thinking that because people are going to be working from home, they don't need to commute, they're changing the way that they are buying homes. Look, he can have his opinion, everyone can have theirs, right? But this is also the guy who thought inflation was transitory. So let's take it with a grain of salt. When you have realtors complaining about prices escalating so rapidly, we have a problem. I saw this in 2017. I'm seeing it right now. It's crazy. Everyone thinks, realtors have it good right now, but the prices going up so quickly and constantly getting outbid is actually terrible for business, right? So we have to remember who this person is, and let's see what he does tomorrow with the interest rate. But I'm going to prove you to a point of how we're comparing ourselves to 2017. So I have right here a chart that I've taken all the data for, and you can see in this column I've highlighted, it's all the change in prices as a percentage. Yes, prices in 1974 was 52,000, right? And you can see here in 2016 to 2017, we saw effectively a 28% price increase in about 2 years. So we went from 730,000 to 822, right? Right now, if we look at 2020 and 2021, we add that two thing up, we're at 38% increase. The fact that he thinks that the exuberance isn't like 2017, and this is before how crazy it is at the start of 2022, I think he's out for lunch, or I don't know what number he's looking at, right? So something to be considerate of. While I do have this chart for you, a lot of people are saying, hey, there's a crash. Look, the biggest crash we had in the 90s is, if I add it all up, it took about 7 years to get to 32%. If you bought something, call it mid last year, you're up 30% already. So again, something for you to contemplate whether you're saying, hey, there's a crash, or there's going to be whether the crash is going to make prices come down and you're going to wait to buy. Because by the time you wait to buy, how quickly have prices gone up? Again, I just want to remind you that. All right, second article here. We've got annual inflation raises to 4.8%. We already knew inflation was going to be high, right? They're saying right now that, it's the highest ever since 1991. And we already knew this. Like, we saw at the USA print inflation of 7%. This isn't going to slow down anytime soon, but because these numbers are being compared from year to year, we're probably going to see the die down of talks about inflation come April and May, because when you compare, say, the May numbers of this year, 2022, to last year in 2021, if it stays the same, there's no increase, right? So they may taper off on the talking of inflation. But right now, when we're still comparing ourselves to 1 year ago, it is very high. Now, my question has always been saying, like, look, I know inflation is not really 5%, and I just picked up something here to give you an idea. Depending on what you're buying, your basket of goods in your CPI print in inflation is totally different. So if you eat bacon, you're up 19% right now. Your raw steak, 22%. If you're from gas from last year, you're actually up 50%, right? So this whole inflation thing, take it with a grain of salt of what it is. It's not a good metric for measuring like actual inflation of your daily life. All right, the next one here. Now, you know how I was talking about the Bank of Canada interest rate? They have 8 dates that I've highlighted here that they are probably going to make announcements of changes of the interest rate. So this one is going to happen tomorrow at 10 a.m. If I had to bet, I bet say 60% chance they probably won't do it. I'm going to bet on that. Maybe 70% chance they do it. It's kind of like LeBron James. Until he stops making it to the finals, I'm going to keep betting on him. So until I see Bank of Canada actually raise interest rates, I'm going to call chicken on it. Now, there are a lot of people calling that they're going to increase interest rates. I'd say give it a 40% chance. But it really, at the end of the day, I think Bank of Canada is going to follow US. And ironically, US, the Feds, is announcing the interest rate in the afternoon tomorrow. So even if they don't increase this one, right, I know one is coming in March for sure. This date over here, March 2nd. So just be prepared. Now, just because interest rates go up by, say, 0.25%, or even if you're very bearish on the market and it goes up 0.5%, it's going to slow the market down, but it's not going to make it go into a frenzy. I think we're going to have to see mortgage rates at 3% before we see any change in month of inventory and pricing. And to get to 3%, we have to hike many, many times, or the fixed has to go into about 3.5%. So that's already at like 2.8 right now, but the variable's at like 1.15. I saw some of my clients get, normally like at 1.4. So you're going to have to hike that 7 times to get it there, right? And that's assuming the banks don't change the prime. So while a lot of people are waiting for interest rates to come down, for prices to come down, I would hold your breath a little bit longer. We're really going to have to see like a hike on every single one of these dates to see real estate prices come down from that, in short. Now, I got next article here. Ford kicks off with Housing Summit to help fund municipalities to cut red tape. So I've talked a lot about this, where a lot of price increases due to lack of supply, and a lot of lack of supply is because the incentive structure is messed up, because a lot of people who kind of are the ones that stamp the approval for like higher buildings and increased density are also the ones that are incentivized not to do it, because the people that live in the area that vote for them don't want that density there, right? So now they're implementing a lot of red tape cutting. So the TVO had a really funny article here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but they said that they somehow leaked the report. So this article was on the 19th, saying they was going to have a meeting for it. And on the 20th, they leaked the proposed amount. So remember, what I'm telling you is proposed. It could always change, right? Kind of like, Gardner, tear down, tear not, not tear down, tear down, not tear down, right? But this is what they're saying. So any city that has a population of over 100,000 people, they're going to basically allow every single family home to be upsized to 4 units. Meaning that if you have one single family home, you can add a basement suite, or you can tear it down, turn it into a 4-plex without having to go through a lot of red tape, right? The other one is talking about underused, vacant commercial things that you can convert into residential. If you can do that, you can reuse a lot of properties, because there's some really big industrial parts that maybe just aren't used to their best potential, right? Then you have removing lot size and shade impacts to control development. If you don't know what development is, there's all these like ridiculous studies like light studies and sound studies to build something. And that's part of the red tape and why things get so expensive. If they're going to remove that, fantastic. Projects of 10 units or fewer will be exempt from site plan review. Wonderful. So now you can get a lot of more investor purpose-built properties to be torn down without having to go through so much processing. And then we're going to remove the public consultations for minor variances, right? So if you ever converted a basement into a legal secondary suite, if you're just like off by call it 1 foot or something like that to get double-side parking, you can go to get a minor variance because it's so small. It's effectively saying you comply with everything except for a little bit, but you have a public consult where all the neighbors come and it's like, no, I don't want density, right? So it's one of those things where if you remove that, it speeds up the process in kind of increasing and adding units to the market so that there's more people that can live without increasing the price, right? And then you're also talking about reducing the scope of heritage. I've sat on many kind of developers trying to add density, like convert farmland into houses or townhomes and even condos. And anything that's heritage, there's always a heritage person that comes in there that just says no to everything. And if you can remove that, obviously that will help. And they're also going to start penalizing cities that are trying to limit timely approvals, which is great because now we're putting incentive structures for these people who are taking their time. Because you have to remember, the cost of turning something into more units is bared on by the person who's building. And the longer it takes to get those permits, the longer they're holding this property because they're also putting leverage on it, right? So by not holding as long and having less red tape, the cost will go down. Right. I've talked about this before, and this is kind of looping into what I was talking about, like Toronto being ranked as one of the most expensive cities to build. A lot of it has to come to do with the fact that we have so much taxes and red tape and development charges. And even though in this article says that the material cost is actually relatively cheap in Toronto, it's all the taxes and the labor that comes along with it to build that becomes very expensive. And I've seen it, like, the material cost is about 30% or so, but the taxes are somewhere between like 15 to 20%. Think about that. If you remove that from, call it $1,000 per square foot condo, that reverts it back to, call it $800, right? So that could be pulling prices back 15, 20% just right there. So this is why it's important that in the previous article, if they can remove some of these red tapes, it would alleviate some supply and make building more stuff in Toronto a lot easier. Now, just for fun, I pulled it over here. Out of all the cities to build, Toronto's ranked 8th, number 1 being Hong Kong, 2 London, and 3 Tokyo, which is standard. But Toronto being 8 and 9, a lot of people always complain like, hey, we are Canada, we have so much land, but you have to remember we're landlocked between the Greenbelt and the lake, right? So I've talked about this in a different video, I'll put it up here. There's just not much land you can build in the Golden Horseshoe, so you have to build up, and that's why it is expensive, because when you add density in a vertical, it costs more than if you sprawl to more land, right? Now, obviously, if you go outside the Greenbelt, it could get a lot cheaper. All right, guys, so I wanted to keep it short for this one, but I am going to kind of address whether the Bank of Canada's interest rate, what's going to happen on next Tuesday's video. Make sure you stay tuned for that. And if you're looking for any help in terms of the real estate market on kind of whether you're trying to buy something or invest, or whether you should wait a little bit because there's interest rate hikes coming, there's a policy changes for investors' down payment, you can reach out to me right here. It's www.chavzen.com. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya! Now that you're done watching this one, how about this one? Oh, you know what? This one's good too. Ooh, this one's really good. You know what? Just watch them both.